All right, can you guys see my screen?
Certainly can.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Happy Friday. We're super excited to have the Think team join us today, and we have a special guest, and his name is Jeff Welch. So Jeff is the VP and Chief Service Development Officer at Think Systems, and I'm sure you wear a lot of hats. And today he's kind of just going to walk us through business transformation and systems modernization. So for those of you guys who don't know, we are Tech Hub South Florida, and our mission is to build South Florida into a tech hub. So that's a slogan we really put out on social media. We make sure our members know that. We make sure everybody's on the same plan as us, because we're super pumped about all the movement in South Florida recently. Right, so this is our community creed. So our goal is to be as inclusive and as welcoming as possible, and also being people first, right? So we try to be engaging by having different events, different groups to join, and workshops like this where you can learn and apply different systems and even strategies to your everyday life. Yeah, so this is an overview, and like I said, we really make it clear that our mission is to build South Florida into a tech hub. So we are a nonprofit, so we are membership driven, and right now we have about 200 corporate companies within Tech Hub, and we also have individual members. So in total, we have about, I'd say like 10,000 talented people throughout our organization. And our goal is really just to build a community down here and connect the right people. So if you guys want to take a look and just kind of browse through all the different members we have here. And if you actually look, it's like Office Depot, Boca Code, UKG, Modernizing Medicine. And the one thing that we all have in common is that we all use tech, right? So that kind of shows that we are inclusive, we are welcoming. As long as you're evolving in tech, you could definitely be part of our organization. So these are just a few of our benefits. We have weekly newsletters that get sent out every Monday. So if you're not on that mailing list, you can actually go ahead and check it out on our website. We have member profiles that we are currently updating right now. We also have job listing and resume distribution. So let's say if you are looking for a new role, you can go ahead and add your resume to our kind of like our system. And then we also have job listings. So let's say if Think was hiring, they can go ahead and list the job listings on our website. So we're excited about that. We also have different speaking opportunities. For example, you know, with these workshops, with community coffees, with our tech talks every Monday nights. And we also try to help out as much as we can with PR and blog support, right? So we do member spotlights, we connect different members with media publications to help get the word out about all the awesome things you guys are doing. So you guys can obviously learn more at Tech Hub South Florida, and we will be dropping some links in the chat for you guys to check out. All right, so these were the events and the speaking opportunities I was telling you guys about. Every Monday night we do tech talks, but just to give you guys a heads up, we will be doing tech talks in person every other Monday starting in May. And it's going to rotate between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca, and even West Palm Beach. So if anybody has any awesome speaking topics or wants to get involved with this, we are looking for volunteers, we are looking for speakers, and we definitely want you to join these. So next, we also do community coffees every other Tuesday. So these are panel discussions on hot topics, and we bring in thought leaders to kind of share, you know, their point of view. And then we also have room for Q&A. So if you guys ever had any questions for any of the leaders sharing, you can go ahead and ask on this platform. We also do podcasts. So every other Tuesday when we don't have the community coffee, we interview innovative and awesome people in South Florida. So it can be CEOs or just executives or even just, you know, entrepreneurs and founders who are really making a difference today. And lastly, we have our lunch and learn. So we do this every Friday. And this is actually, so this is it. We really just, you know, 60 minutes of a workshop, and then we leave a little bit of a room for Q&A for our audience to ask different questions. So this is a resume distributor that I was briefly telling you guys about, where you can actually upload your resume and it gets sent to all of our members that are hiring. And you can feel free to join us on Slack if you haven't done so already. And we have different channels for developers. We have a different channel for news, for peer groups and all of that. So I definitely recommend joining our Slack channel. I can go ahead and drop a link to that in the chat, but I'm just gonna pass it over to the speaker and our special guest today, Jeff Welch.
All right. Thank you, Monica. So, especially with that lead in, I think that what I'm going to share with you all today is just so flippin' appropriate. I mean, there are very few times, I've been in the tech industry for a long time. There are very few times when I actually find something that I think is worthy of shouting from the rooftops, right? And that's literally what I think that what I'm going to present to you today. I can't wait until we get into the Q&A session and we start to see how well all the wheels have been spinning as I go through some of this stuff. So just real quick, in order to get into this, I want to provide just a little bit of background on what Think is and who I am, so you understand where I'm coming from with this story, with this presentation. So Think is a business management consulting company. We are about 70 people big, quickly growing to 80 here in the next couple weeks. We service mostly mid-markets and provide just a variety of services to our clients. At a personal level, I've spent a career mostly in the tech side. And you'll notice that I have a lot of opinions. I've even taken time to write down some of my opinions in 2 books that I've co-authored with my partners. So happy to talk to you about all of this stuff. But what I really want to get to is talking about business transformation and systems modernization. Big mouthful, but we all live it, right? Because we're in tech. Everybody knows what the challenges are too. You go to modernize a system, and what the business will want to do with it is a lift and shift to the new tech. And that's just wasteful. You don't take advantages of the new tools quite the same way. Data migration is a huge headache. It's just a fact of life. When we're moving to new systems, we have to deal with it. Trying to encapsulate what data migration is, how much you have to move, and things like that are just part of the job, and we wish it could be easier. Now, when you do start to implement business transformation, and we're not just simply modernizing systems, we create new business processes. When you create new business processes, they don't map in well with your old systems. And what you end up with is a broken ecosystem, and you have to go and repair it. You're modernizing, transferring capabilities, just changing the way you have to do business in order to make systems and processes work together. And then there's transformation value. This is one of the hard ones, right? When a CIO, CTO knows that they need to transform the business to use technology differently, most of the time they're going to the board, to somebody, and saying, I need money to do this, and my best guess is it's going to be valuable to the company. It's very difficult to quantify, though. There's a lot of reputation at play when you do something like that. And when you're moving people, processes, and tools all at the same time, it's really a best guess as to how well you're going to end up when you get through. This list could go on forever. We're all familiar with it because we live in this environment. All right, so because we live in this environment, we have developed ways to deal with it. And this is one of the things that Think excels at. We've spent a lot of time finding exactly the right consultants to be able to do this kind of work. We generate process flow diagrams, system diagrams, ETL spreadsheets for everything that we want to move around. We try to scope customizations that are going to be needed as a result of transformation and modernization. There's always some customization that has to go in. We all know that. The business is always going to ask us for ROI, and we do our best to come up with that kind of information. And at the end of the day, really, when it comes down to it, once we get the go, we leverage heavily business analysts and top tier project management. That's the way we try to mitigate risks. So just taking a look at that whole process and thinking about the different tools and artifacts and skills that we've had to develop to manage something like business transformation and systems modernization is really on one hand, it's a miracle that we can do so well. And on the other hand, we have things like, from PMI, 70% of tech projects fail at some level, so we're obviously not doing all that well. What I really wanted to talk to you today about, and I think this is where it gets exciting, this is where the rooftop hollering starts to come in, is around developing a digital twin, or maybe even creating a target operating model, excuse me. So when we're thinking about transforming today, and first off, when I say digital twin, I'm not talking about making a digital clone of your entire business, all your IT systems, everything that you need to know. Every individual business is going to have a different level of need for a digital twin. And what you might want to do is build a digital twin of just a few key systems or processes, things that are, going to be changing or that you have to monitor and do things like that. You could, and some businesses might be so critical that you want to really put a lot of fidelity into your digital twin. Launching rockets is something that you don't really want to break from process on. You don't want to miss something, right? Anything to do with maybe even healthcare. You've got people's lives in the mix, right? You might want to put a little bit more money into a little bit more effort into creating a good digital twin and knowing when you make changes, what is that going to do to your systems and processes? When it comes to a target operating model, this is something that a lot of businesses are starting to talk about. And frankly, over the past year, given the pandemic, a lot of business models have had to change dramatically. We do work in merger and acquisition areas, and what we've found out is that in M&A, for example, providers of things that you need in your business are one of the most highly analyzed aspects of any business in an M&A, right? So if your vendor supply chain got interrupted, you weren't able to maintain your business at the right level, that's one of the first things that someone's going to look at when you go into a merger and acquisition. How you have to transform your business to try to protect yourself from those kinds of things is really where a targeting operating model can come into play, right? So you can say, this is where I am today. This is where I need to be tomorrow. You might have to develop new governance and controls, new processes, new technologies. You might need new people. You might need a lot of different things, but you model that out so that you can have a really good plan for how you're going to get there, right? You can see it. And that's really the big difference. It's not just intuitive anymore. We can model it and we can see it. So how do we model it and how do we see it? There's no real magic to some of this stuff, right? You need business transformation expertise. You need somebody that knows how to create a business canvas, work through all the components of it, document it at the right level, make sure that things are moving forward, and then roll that into a model. You might want to just change an operating model, map out where your suppliers are, locations of offices, your value delivery chain. And this can be value through manufacturing, it can be value through services, it can be value through anything. Your organization, where people sit, where people work, what tools they need, how you maintain compliance and information systems, how you know if your business is doing well, what kind of management systems do you have, what kind of reporting tools and scorecards do you have, right? They all come into play. So the neat thing about all this is that through literally happenstance, we've encountered a company called BusinessOptix. We were part of we made an acquisition. They were in the periphery. We started to learn what these folks did, and we took it into our consultancy and just found that it's an amazing tool, right? And I'm going to spend a lot of time today not going through PowerPoints, but going into the tool and showing you how this works. So I don't want to dig into it too deep right now, but think about just one unified model. right? Because anybody who's done this kind of work before has created all those assets, the Visios, the organization charts, the spreadsheets, all the different things that you have. They're all kind of disconnected. There's no way to link these things together. You can't build one unified model for what you're trying to do, but you can now, right? And that's what I'm going to show you. All right, so in order to show you this tool, I don't want to do just a tool overview. I don't think that would be very valuable. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to present you the use of the tool in a particular case study. And in this case study, I'm going to introduce you to an organization. They're, mid-market, 67 million in annual revenue, largely from memberships, publications that they create, and programs that they provide to their membership. In this case study, and this is a customer that we've worked for, they have legacy data. It's largely something that's grown up around Oracle, right? It's an on-prem Oracle implementation, lots of integration points. NetSuite's one of the big integration points, but they had a problem, and they knew they had a problem. They were unable to take advantage of industry innovations in marketing. Now, marketing drove everything in their revenue, right? If they didn't have continual refresh of membership, they weren't going to have the revenue that they had. So this was not just a peripheral process. Marketing for this company is almost everything, right? Beyond providing the publications and programs that they do. They had a large database, large Oracle database, with tons of members, many ways to pull lists out of their database, but the lists were not what I would consider intelligent. They didn't have enough metadata on each of the members to be able to use that in their marketing efforts. And they had very little use of downstream customer data, like did somebody actually come to a seminar? Did somebody buy a publication? What area of expertise might they be in because they bought that publication? None of those things really existed in their system. So their solution was they were going to modernize. They were going to transform their business processes to use Salesforce Sales Cloud, and do away with the Oracle system that they had. So I don't think anybody here would take a look at this scenario and say, well, that's atypical, right? People don't do that, because this is exactly what people do, right? I mean, companies that need to grow and transform are always trying to take advantage of new industry technologies. It's always a pain because you have 10 years of investment in an old system and you have to drop that and move to something new. This is truly transformation. When you're transforming your business processes and your systems at the same time, it really gets kind of risky, so it's a big jump, and it does take a leap of faith. All right. What I'm going to show you, just to build some anticipation, I'm going to show you a few things, because remember that integrated model: an organizational model, a systems model, a marketing process model, and a compliance model. All these things in one unified area. And before somebody starts to freak out on me, I am going to show you something that looks like a Visio flowchart. I'm going to work my way into that. That's actually a byproduct of the modeling data that we have. So it's not the product. And that's kind of one of the big keys here. After that, I'm going to show you some of the insights that you can get from this modeling. And it's not perfect, but it's good for this case study. But cumulative cycle time comparison for what a marketing process would look like. Activity work times, so you can compare. Activity work times, by the way, are really cool if you're thinking about business process automation, right? If you could identify areas where you have a manual process and you can automate that, you can see exactly what that does to your overall operations. That's really, really cool. And then I'm going to show you how we relate process steps to systems and compliance. And I mean, if you think about that, think about trying to maintain compliance, having controls that are in place, documentation, processes, system logs that you have to tie into, things that you use for compliance. It's huge when you can go into a system at that level. All right. Again, one unified model. So, if we think about this and we're thinking about something like our people model, our organization, right? I mean, I'll create something, I'll show you something that's just the organizational model for the marketing process. If we knew we had to do organizational change management, we might build a Ross model, right? And we would show how we were going to take one model and one set of roles and responsibilities and transform it into something else, right? The value chain map, the processes that we use for marketing, all that. This is what I'm going to demonstrate to you. I might come back to this slide and I might not. It depends on if we have questions about it, right? So with that, let me jump over to BusinessOptix. In order to get you into BusinessOptix, there are just a few things, and I'm going to start small. I'm going to start with that organizational model. So obviously a web-based tool. What I have here is a simple organizational chart for what the marketing effort looks like. And while it's not all that important that you take a look at this model and get a good feel for it, what is important is that we see things in here that, say, if I take a look at this CMO position, we see that, sorry, a lot of the stuff that we have allows us to map in a bunch of metadata for like an org chart. We know who's there. We know that the CMO position has a role. We actually have to connect this position in our organizational chart to a role. Now, this is considered master data. So this master data is something that sits kind of in behind the org chart in this tool. And this master data is really key because that's what allows us to link everything together. So I build the org chart, I link it to the master data. We can keep anything we want to keep in this tool in order to make this more comprehensive. We could keep position descriptions. We could keep names of contacts, different things. We can know if we're going to change that role or position to make it responsible for other things. We can document that, and it's all integrated, right? And what's cool about it, and you'll see this in a minute, is you can then tie it into your business and your processes to see exactly how it impacts things. So let me move on. I told you there was a lot of work going on in the systems. So I had to make a systems master data model for this. Now it's kind of rudimentary. There's not a whole lot going on. We're moving from Oracle to Sales Cloud and Salesforce, but there are some things that you want to take account of, right? Office applications. There was a tool that they ended up buying called DE Select, and we'll take a look at that in a bit. It really enhanced productivity, and you needed to know where you were going to use that tool and not use legacy Sales Cloud capabilities. Bulk mail gateways, they're sending mail like crazy, right? So where does that come into play? Not only that, but how does compliance map into your business process when it comes to doing things like that? Pardot for snail mail, different things. So the entire system model gets built out. Now, what I didn't build was I didn't build a system architecture diagram, but if I did, I would have linked all of that into this master data so that I could then link it into my business processes. So you can see that everything gets linked through master data. GDPR. So for compliance, I wanted to create quickly a compliance model that would allow us to link specific articles and parts of GDPR to specific steps in our processes, maybe even to specific systems, right? So that's kind of the neat thing about modeling. It all can get related. These aren't just flat Visio diagrams, and you can take a look at it and build it any way you want. All right, so on to the fun stuff. I told you I'm not drawing Visio diagrams. And in some sense, that's true. And in some sense, that's not true. What we have right now is literally a modeling data view of the marketing transformation. We can see that there's starts, we have steps, yeah, we have the marketing strategy, but I wanted to spend just a second now and show you some of these panels that I'm working with in my data. I have a name. I know it's a manual task. I know that it belongs to a lane, business management. That's kind of key from a RACI perspective, who's accountable, who's responsible, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of built into this business process modeling tool. When we get into details, again, RACI, we could get into transformation. Not much here, except that I know that when I transform, this step isn't going to change. I'm keeping it. There are other steps in here where I'm going to get rid of them, or I'm going to modify them. I'm literally going to keep the step, but I'm going to modify the systems that it's done in and how it's performed. You get into compliance, you can make note of where you need, there's financial models, GDPR type, customer data models, any kind of model that you want to load into it, you can load into it and then link. So it would be almost impossible to really build a process using this view, although it's very powerful and you can get into it. Let me bounce over here to something now that looks like Visio. Now, remember what I said was that this chart isn't necessarily just a drawing, but this is the product of all the other data that I've created, right? And that really becomes the key. This is where I think the power really is. So right now we're looking at the current state, and I know you can't read this. I just want to orient you real quickly. We have lanes. Think of accountability in your organization. Who's accountable for the steps in this process? We can take a look here quickly and see that data analysts are involved way up front, and you come back to them a bunch of times. We can see that there's an area at the bottom that deals with really taking accounting information that is needed in order to create a new campaign code and figure out how to make that happen. There's always some kind of visual design element to marketing that happens later in the process. It happens at time of need, and there's always a delay dealing with that. So what I can do now is I can take this process the way it sits. It runs a little bit longer. I'm looking at its current state, and I can take a look at its future state now. So this is how we're going to transform the business to use this new tool. We now see that there is nothing going on out of the accounting system any longer. There are no manual steps there. Visual design is moved way up front. That's important to the business. Now, visual design is driving the marketing, not just sitting back and waiting for somebody to ask for something for marketing. The same thing kind of happens with data analytics. In this section, data analytics, which was used way up front, and was more of just a rote task that had to be repeated a bunch of times until they got what they wanted. Now they're really being used for value add. They're really being used for market intelligence and the capabilities that they can use here. We have the new process that's using Sales Cloud and the rest of the process. Now, I could also take a look at, really what are all the changes? So what is the difference between how I used to do business and how I'm now going to do business? We can say, let me go back to like the current state. What systems, let me zoom in here a little bit now, it actually matters. What systems are being used for each of these steps in this process in order to complete them? We had a message editor that's part of their bulk mail that they were using. You'll see this all throughout this process. There's a whole lot of office documentation and email. Everything was just, hey, I need this, send an email, do that. There was no real workflow built into it. So they were extremely successful doing it the old way, but they were reaching that limit of how well they could grow and adapt. So the other things, I said that there were other parts in here, like responsibilities. Yeah, who's responsible for that? That's all in here. It's almost too much to look at all at the same time. Let me take out the systems, but we can map all this. We know who's responsible for it. We know what systems the work is being done in, and we can even link down to what steps in this process are important for compliance needs. All right. So what do I want to show you next? I think that really what I'm going to do is show you how some of this stuff comes together. All right. So imagine you build out the process, you got it all modeled, you know where everybody's working, what you need to be doing. You can start to add additional metadata, like how long does this process take? Is there a waiting time before this process can kick off? Are people batching things? You can start to model in that data as well. And what that ends up doing is helping you come up with something like, let's do cumulative cycle time, actually. So based on this model, and this is where it really gets interesting. If you wanted to start using models like this for business process automation, you wanted to take a big process and automate it so people weren't working with it, it was happening faster, it was causing delays not to occur, you can build that data in and you can actually take a look at it, say, this is the old way, and this is how long it took to get this done, fulfill this value. And this is the new way. So of course, the output of the report is only as good as the data that you put in, but we can clearly see here that getting a message through this process is going to be faster now than it would have been before. We have the current model and the future model laid out here side by side. A lot of these steps in the future model go away and get replaced by other ones, but the other ones are faster. Not only that, and it's kind of difficult to see here, but a lot of the things that were taking time, they went from a kind of a production model to a value add model, which just makes the organization that much stronger. Take a look at maybe another report that you can get out of this. Now, so you can start to see different areas where if you were doing modeling to look for efficiencies, to find places where you might use some form of automation, you can literally quantify it, look at it side by side. Now, in this particular use case, it wasn't so much that we were just modifying cells within the business process. We were literally wholesale changing the entire way that a marketing message was developed and building it into a new workflow. So you see a lot of things that don't have double bars. You do see double bars on some things, and largely those efforts are staying, and they're doing the same thing that they were doing. All right. One more thing to show, and then we'll go into questions. We'll dig into this a little bit more. So I mentioned that with this model, we can connect our processes to our systems, to our people, to our roles, to compliance, to all those different things. There are a lot of reports that you can get out of BusinessOptix. Almost every interface here is configurable, and it can show you different things. But what I want to do right now is just maybe we'll take a look only at systems, and maybe I mentioned that at DE select. Let me just do. So now I'm looking at all the business processes that I have flagged for DE select. And if I want to, I can jump straight into this business process by clicking a link and see exactly what's going on there. When I go there, then I can take a look at who's doing it, how long it's going to take, Does it have any compliance needs? Is there any documentation on the step? What systems are everything? So it just gets really easy to see what's going on in your organization. Something else I wanted to maybe take a look at was, let me take out systems here, and I'll just add in GDPR. Now I can see every place in my processes that I have a regulatory compliance need, and this is huge. I mean, if you think about trying to maintain regulatory compliance, right now, especially in the Baltimore, Washington area, there are a lot of, and I think in Florida too, you have a lot of DoD contractors that need CMMC. Trying to model out your processes, build your controls, show how you're maintaining this cybersecurity maturity model in your organization can be done using a tool like this, and you don't have to build a whole nother thing. You can actually build what you're doing and then link everything in and document all your processes. And when it comes time for an audit, you've got your information, you have your reports, you have everything that you need. You can move right through it. All right, so what can I show you? Let's turn this now into not just a monologue. Let's open the floor for questions, and hit me. See if I can work you through some of this stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So if anybody has any questions in the audience, please feel free to take yourself off mute, or you could just drop the questions in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. But Jeff, I'll go ahead and start. Because this happens with us a lot, where it's like, we're a small team of 3, we're operating with, 100, or we're talking to hundreds of people per day, and we have tons of members. So how do we divide this mind map sort of into categories? Because like for us, it's like we have marketing, we have membership, we have internal, we have committees. So like, what's a good starting point for like startups or just smaller teams to not get overwhelmed with too many systems?
Yeah, so I would say, what you want to do, as a business, where you need to be, right? Where maybe you want to mature something that isn't quite as mature as you had hoped, or it's now time to mature it, right? Just because business conditions have changed. I would say, using a tool like this, first off, those areas that you were talking about, make those lanes, right? Start to document the activities that go into those lanes. You might not need just one process, you might need several. But at the same time, think about this. You have roles and positions in your company. You probably have position descriptions that need to be maintained. You might need a new one, right? So where are you going to document that? Right now, what most companies would do is they'd say, well, I've got this folder over here in SharePoint, and I have all my position descriptions, and they're disconnected from my organizational charts, right? I have to maintain all this dissimilar information all the time. That's one of the reasons you could use something like this. Now, you could still link it to a Word doc or to a PDF file and place that link in your role, in your org chart, so that you know what's going on. Next time you need to hire somebody else, you know exactly where to find it because it's all there, right? If you were talking about marketing, if you were talking about any kind of even repetitive planning to make sure that things are going well, you could model that out. You can develop anything you really want. I mean, so one of the neat things about this tool, for me, I know what it means to me because I know my business, right? I know that I get pulled into customers who are doing these wholesale changes of technologies and systems and having to reinvent processes, retrain people, do all this other kind of stuff. So it means a lot to me in that aspect. From a startup perspective, it's like a blank slate. You could find some way to use this any way you wanted to. I would ask maybe if, me just jump back to this. You know, if you've taken time to document any of this stuff, and you don't have to use BusinessOptix to do it, right? I mean, this is just business planning at a high level. It's operations planning. And BusinessOptix might not be the best one for you, but still these kinds of activities are valuable. They help you get organized. If it starts to get complex enough where you need something like BusinessOptix, then I think that it's appropriate.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So we actually have some questions from Jorge. Jorge, these are awesome questions. How do you compare to ARIS, IBM, Oracle, and the other process architect tools?
Yeah, well, so admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about their architecting tools. I think that, this isn't the only tool in the market that does this kind of stuff. There is a consolidation in the market right now of those kinds of architecting tools. Now, what's happening is that the big platform providers are going out and buying up people who created these tools so that they can use them. BusinessOptix is not an Oracle, but I'd say, for example, BusinessOptix is used by Capgemini globally. Right. I mean, it's something where if they go in to transform a business in accounting and how they manage payroll and how they manage, warehouses, manufacturing, anything, they're using this tool to go in and pitch their case. So how well it compares, yeah, I'm not sure because I'm not all that familiar with the other tools, but I know that this one's being used pretty well in a lot of other environments.
Right. So, Jeff, I believe you answered Jorge's second question, right? Do you have an API to handle GRC tools, or are you using direct links?
So, governance, risk, and compliance, the tools that you use for things like that are in some ways redundant with this. So, governance, risk, and compliance, like if you had a standard, a compliance standard that you needed to meet, rather than build your GRC policies, control documents, everything that you have separate from your process, you would actually link that to link those items to your business process and extract those things from how you're actually doing work. I think it's a different way of going at it. I've seen people, for example, who are doing, I don't know, what is it, PCI, or, oh man, I'm dropping the name. I keep getting it confused with Sarbanes-Oxley, but anyhow, I've seen where the big names, the big consultants come in and conduct audits. They use systems to document all your systems and processes. Your IT department goes out and says, here are our logs, and they ship them to them. Here are our policy documents that govern this control area. Who's allowed to touch this? Here's my list of people who have credentials that can perform this activity. And it's just, somebody has to take all this stuff that's pulled out of all these disparate systems and combine it into something to be able to audit it and look at it. I personally, I think that's a busted way of doing it. It'll get you there, right? But it's not connected to how you do business. And it's so much easier if you can take your business model and then connect that stuff to it, and then use it as an extract from that business model rather than have it just be a single purpose tool or capability. I could be challenged on that. It would be fun to actually sit down with a GRC tool and say, this is how I do it over here. How would you do it over there? I'd want to engage BusinessOptix at that level, but that would be a neat test of the tool. I'm sure it would shine, but I wouldn't bet a whole lot of money on it.
Awesome. And Jorge added that's audit tools. So I'm not the expert here. So it's nice to hear, different perspectives and figure out where everything plugs in. So we actually have another question by Bob. He asks, how do you handle legacy software systems?
How do you handle legacy software systems? So I'm going to assume that the context is, what do these systems do and where are they used and how are they connected, right? And how you would build that. And if that's the context of the question, you'd build a system architecture diagram just like you would any other system architecture diagram in a tool like this, and then you connect them. You could literally go to a system architecture model and break it down to tables in a database, processes that are being used, log files that are being created and monitored. You could model all of that out and connect it all with that master data that I talked about earlier. The neat thing about that is that when you unplug a box, you see what it impacts. When you decide to rewrite a process, what else is it going to impact? Now, it does assume that you have everything documented, but at some level, you will have that kind of information.
Right. So Jorge actually has another question for you, Jeff. How do you keep pace with the new clouds and systems that pop every day?
Well, I mean, that's a constant challenge. If you're in IT, that's just part of your world. I don't think that things inside an organization change all that rapidly. There are new capabilities that come online. And it's really a business question at that point in time as to whether or not you're going to seek to implement that capability inside your business. That comes with real cost, real time commitments, and real change in expertise. So, those things are handled at a business level for the most part. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. I'm not sure.
Jorge, did that answer your question?
I feel like I'm missing Jorge in a lot of these. So somehow or another, maybe we need to get together and chat.
Yeah, you two definitely need to follow up.
Right. Maybe in Boca.
Yeah. All right. So does anybody else have any questions for Jeff? Oh, Jorge said he was looking for a page or something. Okay. Jorge,
So, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, Jorge, if you want to take yourself off mute, feel free to do so. But if you can't at the moment, that's okay too.
So, if I may, it's open invitation. I love talking shop. I get smarter every time I talk to somebody about this stuff. Would love to get into details on BusinessOptix or business transformation in general. So we can be reached at the following links. I think that the best way to reach me is probably through email. There's my email address. And if somebody is curious and they do run out the BusinessOptix and start a free trial or want to talk to somebody, just let them know that you heard about this from the South Florida Tech Hub Lunch and Learn. I'd like to see if a few people do get interested. I think that would be awesome. I think it would show well for this organization as well.
Yeah, 100%. And Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll attach your email to the follow-up that I will be sending out. And I can even add the link that Laura just dropped as well.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. I look forward to hearing from anybody that wants to talk. Jorge, especially you.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Happy Friday. I hope everybody has an amazing weekend. We'll definitely have to think back for a part 2 sooner than later, hopefully in person this year. But in the meantime, feel free to just visit thinkconsulting.com and techhubsouthflorida.org.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks,
Thank you
Monica.
all. Thanks, Jeff.
Have a great weekend.
Y'all do the
Great
same.
weekend, everybody.
Take care.